A riddle. The sooner you admit it, the more you will be able to achieve it, that it never can be quite accomplished, and that if you reach it, it most certainly will be undone before your eyes and by the very act of your accomplishment and consummation, since it can only be maintained and cultured by your never reaping it, for harvesting means death, while ploughing, labouring, and hard work is the only guarantee of life, of continuity, continuance, and constancy. So never try to catch your dream. It must remain a dream, for dreams can never stand awakenings, and dreams are all the carrots and illusions that can make life carry on in spite of all delusions, disappointments, and deceptions, since although dreams are in themselves beguiling, they are dreams that never can be apprehended, and as such untouchable as perfect virgins, to be loved quite safely and pursued forever. No bounds. Forgive me that I love you, but I just can't manage it alone, and the mere sight of you is too intoxicating not to give some relevant results in crazy outbursts of exhilaration and the perfect drunkenness of beauty. Stay that way, my love, and I can promise you that I will go on loving you forever in impeccable and perfect faithfulness, to never fail you with my loyalty. Since the love that you inspire must transcend and brush aside to conquer all impossibilities. Fragile. As my love grows old, it grows forever younger in vitality and enthusiasm and power of expansion. But it is an ardent flame that must be tamed and well contained, to not burst open into violent and unforeseen explosions that might consume not just itself, but even the most precious object of your worship. So take heed, and please excuse my warning that I must contain my love in order to preserve it, as the most uniquely perfect and constructive force that only can be treated and contained with utmost care. Deliverance. Deep in the night you sneak up into me, to stay there raping me and stealing all my soul, but to endow it once again with the profoundest inspiration, winning me for love, possessing me both heart and soul. And still I never can get hold of you and keep you for myself, but only love you unto madness and exteriorization, like some surgic kind of surging meditation. While the only thing that I can do is just to love you, which you seem to take as natural, accepting it and having nothing much against it. Keep my love then, so that you at least, although I never can keep you, can keep something of me, which is much more than all of me. Meeting in darkness, earth hour. In the darkness of your eyes it's easy to commit oneself and get completely lost in the dissolving magic of enchantment, since bewitched by love you are not only all at sea, but even all beside yourself, tongue-tied, with arms tied also, with your hands behind your back, your mouth and senses sealed, while all that you can do and voice and think of is your love. The total consummation is the total concentration, and that is how life begins. Absent but lasting presence. You say, my love, that you can only love me when you see me and I am at hand, concrete and tangible in virtual presence. But for me, the soul is much more real, more present and more tangible, and even more so when you are not present. since I cannot live without that love of yours, which constantly pervades my whole existence. Let me dream of you and keep you in my dreams, forever tangible and more so even in your absence, since I'll never let you go away from me, where you belong, inseparable from my soul, no matter how much falsely separated we may be, since all the senses always lie by satisfying mirages to please us, while the soul sees far behind reality and sees it through to see what is much truer and more lasting. Aquarius. Actually, an old poem written way down in 1984. A new dawning age of liberation will deliver us from every tyranny, since no one is to order anyone about, since only common sense will rule us all. Religions will lose all authority, and only those of them are able to survive who are completely free from dogmatism. Exaggerations and fanaticism shall disappear, and there will never more be any Martin Luther, Mahomet, no Marx, no Lenin, and no Hitler. Never more a demagogue or autocrat, and those few monarchies that will survive shall most of all be just protectors of democracy. No martyrs shall be needed any more. Self-sacrifice shall be unnecessary, and only common sense and honor shall be leader to us all. Justice shall be the supremest good in life, and only that shall be the common aim of all humanity together. All intolerance shall be prohibited by law, and those poor few who anyway indulge in it, in foolish arbitrariness, irrationality and folly, and the self-destructiveness that must inevitably follow, shall be pitied, since all destructivity quite naturally then shall be regarded as an illness. God shall not be mortal any more as crucified, and Satan shall be banished to the myths of fairy tales, and only simple human common sense shall dominate the world religions and ideals, and this religion down to earth of common sense shall not include just all religions, but even every non-religion. My unknown cousin. As a revelation from above, you suddenly appear as some kind of godsend in the substitution of all dear ones that I lost, as by some kind of universal law that losses never can be suffered without karmic compensations in one way or another. Even you, they say, have suffered hardships, and we might thereby find in each other some kind of a recompense and complement each other, which we both might need. Thus a new chapter has begun, which definitely closes old ones simply by miraculously constituting their continuation. Dumbfounded awesomeness. How often does it happen that you suddenly are served with the existence of an unknown cousin who proves more like a friend, but even like a twin and sister? Once in your life at most, and there could hardly be a moment more fantastic, precious, sweet, and priceless than a union of such kind of souls of the same vein, of equal wavelengths to perfection. Love is not the word for such unique coincidence, but rather some mysterious force of destiny that brings such miracles about, which only leave you thunderstruck with gratitude to Providence, and to whatever power outside yours that you could never think of or imagine in your negligible absolute minuteness, against the universal ocean of ethereal workings, of the fathomless profundity of metaphysical enigmas of the ever-living soul. Better fusion energy. The soul shines through the eyes, and nothing can exclude its beauty. radiant and forever young and true in honesty and straight integrity of timeless worth and durability. Let us remain thus as companions on the timeless path of destiny towards no end but always forward as the best of friends forever. That is the most precious gift that never can be wasted. Trust in the trustworthiness of two united hearts that found each other, never to be separated in the unity of spiritual fusion. Your home. You offered me a glimpse of paradise, and I was struck with wonder, awe, and worship of a perfectly ideal place to live, with hanging gardens on the roof, and close to nature, although still in town, with space and air to breathe, and freedom without limits, with no ghosts in any cupboard, no hangovers, nothing dark, just openness and friendliness. And such a home you offered me. How could I possibly accept? I had to leave too early the next day, and any intimate engagement would just have exacerbated the departure. But we are still here in lasting friendship, and your home remains for the next time, and until then we can continue building our relationship on firmer ground to next time celebrate it thoroughly. Precarious validity. What do I care about what people think, attentive flatteries and criticism, misunderstandings of short-sightedness, intolerant superficiality, and hasty, violent, unjust reactions? Let them rave who can't control themselves. My only aspiration and ambition is to stick to honesty and truth in faithful loyalty of beauty, that my only aim is to take care of with my utter tenderness of worship. Let my words and dreams remain unknown to those who do not care, as long as they remain available to those who understand and love, and in their hearts are capable of keeping up their soul's flames burning for the only thing that really matters, joys that last forever. No doubt about it. Don't ask me who my love is. It's enough that she herself can feel it. Be aware that no one else is meant, and that my loyalty endures in constant faithfulness for her alone, and thus it's futile that I name her. Love's sincerity is unmistakable and always felt at heart. Unnecessary of expression, language, vows, and promises will not suffice, and no protesting can be more convincing. Rest assured, my love, that I will never with a word betray you, since there can be no impediment of any limiting or mortal kind to my unquenchable sincerity of purest constancy of love of you. The return of the native. After the Turkish Holocaust in 1915, the Armenian ambition, a kind of documentary. Back to basics in the dawn of time, to ruins of the past and memories forgotten. After many years of exile, there at last was finally a day of coming back to the original, to houses laid in ashes by the cruelties of history, to cemeteries without gravestones, and to history buried alive, together with the unknown victims of the first of Holocausts in Turkey. There could never be a sorrow and a melancholy more profound, and still there was the opportunity to start again, rebuild the past, restore an ancient civilization, and return to timeless glory of a righteous people that did never any wrong, but only suffered wrong immensely without any reason for it. Somehow the dimension of the suffering of timelessness remains incurably constructive, always ready to begin anew with work and reconstruction of the greatest glory of them all, the good that never can give up, but ever and again is victimized to only resurrect and start again in ever greater and increasing glory of eternal continuity, of life that never can be quenched without resuming ever greater power. Tillbaka till det verkliga i tidernas begynnelse, till grunderna för vår historia, till ruinerna av det förflutna och till glömda minnen efter många års exil. Till slut kom äntligen den dagen då han kunde återvända till sitt ursprung, till det hem som lagts i aska av historiens grymhet, till de gravstenslösa kyrkogårdarna och till den historia som begravdes levande tillsammans med de tallösa och kända offren för det förra seklets första stora folkmord i Turkiet. Ingen sorg kan vara mera djup, och aldrig fanns det en melankoli så oerhörd som i det vakuum av de tysta skriken, i oändligheten av de glömda offren. Men ändå fanns där en möjlighet att börja om från början och återuppbygga det förflutna, restaurera en antik unik civilisation och återvända till en tidlös härlighet hos ett rättfärdigt folk som aldrig gjorde någon skada eller något ont, men som fick lida outsägligt utan att ha alls förtjänat det. På något sätt förblir oändlighetens tidlöshet av lidande en dimension obotligt konstruktiv, beredd att alltid börja om från början med rekonstruktion och arbete av det mest ärorika slag av alla. Godheten som aldrig kan ge upp, men ständigt offras och marteras om på nytt, blott för att återuppstå och på nytt begynna arbetet som ständigt blott blir härligare i sin eviga kontinuitet, som livet självt som aldrig kan besegras utan att blott triumfera, mer oövervinneligt än någonsin. Strange coincidence, you other dream that never ends, but always justifies my love, and makes it constantly increase to never stop developing, as if you always were there, while we haven't known each other more than some 10 days, and only met once in a lifetime, in a moment longer than a lifetime, of some history and truth, of some momentous imposition, since we always were there, close enough for 50 years, to never meet until this strange event of fate all of a sudden bringing us together out of chance and by coincidence. Well, well, there's nothing we can do about it but the best of it and keep it up, as may be the most rare and strangest love affair that ever came across our minds, not by ourselves but by reality, for us to do something about it, and some valid thing, of course, to better our statistics, and perhaps to lick our wounds of all those past disasters and experiences of shipwrecks, undeserved and only brought by accident and bad luck for some reason. Well, we have the chance now, and our moment is eternity, for us to shape according to our wish in mutual affection without limits. Miraculous encounters. How do two people find each other, lost in billows of eternity, identifying and remembering each other from an unknown ancient history of nothing left except vibrations of immortal souls for recognition? It's a miracle, and the more undeniable as such, as experts even know with certainty the art of recognizing spirits, elves and angels of no palpability at all. Denying miracles is to deny the facts of history, and to deny the miracle of life itself. Sharing, you have caught my soul, my love, by simple charm and honesty, and won my heart for you to handle but with care. But there was never anything amiss between us, melting instantaneously together, as two old souls always do, and even sharing the same sorrows, the outrageous tragedies of two beloved sisters, representing beauty, talent, and intelligence, one mother of 3 children, and one sparkling, blooming youth. There is nothing so far that we could not share, so let us just continue sharing our lives together, naturally as it comes, and there can be no end on it. Dream burst. As I dream of you entering my mind in the still of the night and all through the glorious day, I just can't imagine how ever I could do without you, and still we existed for so long, without knowing the other existed. The beauty of the soul transcends all reality, and overrules it by replacing it by its more lasting significance, while reality is only death. But dreams and love and beauty last triumphantly forever. On the edge of extremity. Of course it hurts, all those supreme disappointments, all those disastrous heartbreaks, all those deceits, betrayals, and undeserved adversities. But still it was worth it. The total commitment of your life and soul and body, the wasting of your last energy, the exposure of your inmost feelings, and the loss of everything you had. It was all worth it, since you survived and still can go on loving even more for all your loss. To lose it ever and again in the repetition of eternity, of how you cannot live without your wasting of your love on everything that's worth, all losses of your love forever, to be gone and lost, to be regained forever. Curtsy. As you remain the only tenant of my dreams, my love flows on incessantly, like bleeding wounds of lust and joy, to never stop beautifying all that is to our world, of common friends and relatives, the victims and deceased ones, ever being there more live than ever, while this haze of tenderness beleaguers me to warm me up in ever greater piety towards our love that is a fountain of the purest joy. So let me keep you in my heart, for you to dwell there in supreme security, while I remain the thankful tenant of your own, completely reassured that there could be no better and no safer place for my heart to keep bleeding in tearful joy of thankfulness. Is. Det kan inte undvikas. Det är en del av livet. Isen som du måste ta dig över, slinta på och ofta falla. Aldrig säker, ofelbart försåtlig. Gjord i all sin kyla blott för platta fall. Och alltid en dag eller annan smältande rakt under dina fötter. Sjunkande, försvinnande med dig i djupet, i förödande förlamningskonsekvenser. Och du måste ända gå igenom, eller flera, förr eller senare, igen och åter. Och då hänger allt på kampen för ditt liv som uppstår. Skall du låta dig försvinna och gå ner dig, sjunka och förgås, eller återuppstå kallt förfriskad, om dock något kyligare? Det tar tid att värma upp sig efteråt, men då är man åtminstone erfaren. Men dock återstår det alltid mera is, som alltid kommer att ge efter, då den alltid smälter. Ice. It's unavoidable. It's part of life, the ice you have to cross, and slid on, often falling, never safe, its coldness made for slips, and always one day or another thawing with disastrous consequences, as you must fall through sooner or later, and then all depends on that life struggle which must follow. Will you sink, succumb and perish, or survive, refreshed but somewhat cooler? It takes time to warm up afterwards, but then at least you are experienced to walk more carefully next time, but there will always be more ice, and there will always be more thaws. Digital love. Is it possible? Does it work? It depends on what's behind it. If it is supported by the honesty of telepathic truth, sincerity and will to make it happen, to maintain the contact and the love by thought, if physical reunion is impossible, as it is now in our case, wherefore I cannot love you any less, but only even more for digitally clumsy imperfections. The only risk, how could I possibly let go of such a beautiful relationship, which cost us nothing and allow us only freedom, carrying with it only love and strong affection that forever grows? There is no chance of getting free from such a perfect freedom, binding us together only naturally in the harmony of natural affection. Could there possibly be any harm in such a strangely wonderful liaison? Yes, there is one harm, but one harm only, that of ever losing touch with it to let it go. Separated together. As you whisper in my ear the things I want to hear, my heart melts down to tears for you, my only dear, while distances betray us and our circumstances aggravate our grievances, while our love enhances perfectly to match our chances, to perhaps one day, in spite of all, find something to unite us, while at the same time everything combines to make our separation to our very union. Fate always intertwines to force our fall into what ultimately brings us to remain withal together after all. Helpless almost. Your rationality bewilders me, your sense transcends mine own. I'm a maniac in comparison, and sick at that in mind and soul, while you appear a formidable godsend to adjust me and correct me with your calm good sense and reason. But do I have the capacity to listen and to be corrected by a better self that I did hardly make myself deserved of? It's all up to me, I am afraid, but one thing I will do for sure, to thank you for your mere existence, and to never let you go away or vanish from your vital presence in my life, as my only light to guide me in my blindness. Service. As I move to you with my vibrations tenderly caressing you at length, I just could not feel any better at this consummation of our harmony, as if there couldn't be a thing still lacking in our free existence of pure love and nothing else, as if our separation even couldn't be more negligible, as my life is filled with you. So let us stay that way and carry on, and I will humbly stick to this my altar worship of my daily constant service to our love. Facts. As I dream of you in faithful homage, it is difficult to keep away from worship of the saintly ideal that you represent, while at the same time nothing could be so much down to earth as your impressing common sense and downright honesty of pure sincerity which makes all other positive characteristics negligible and superfluous. Your character and heart so dominating and outweighing, overshadowing all pettiness to be ignored. We struck together instantly the mother lode of life's essentials, and what more can we expect except the joy of sharing it together? Enigmas. As my love rises in the morning with the sun and beauty of the world, there is no match to all that harmony that blooms throughout my soul, singing all your glory, and that we have found ourselves and found each other, never to be separated ever again, as our souls were always grown together into something of an everlasting union, of united wisdom, love and tolerance in worship of eternal truth and beauty. Could I be more clear and explicit? What is there more to say when love has taken our language away to speak more freely, what never could be spoken except by wavelengths of the air, of that strange idiom of vibrations only, that only telepaths may understand, and therefore hold their most expressive silence? Comradeship. My comrade in the struggle is my twin of destiny. Our personalities are intertwined as if we never had but been together, and I don't just only love her, but adore her senselessly, in fatal passions of eternity, and I will gladly suffer for it, as a downright self-tormentor of profession. Cure me not of this my plague, but let me go on loving you forever, as the one friend I could never do without, my bosom friend of destiny and comrade of our freedom struggle of eternity. Kamratskap. Min kamrat i livets kamp är som en ödestvilling. Våra karaktärer är som sammanflätade, som om vi aldrig varit skilda åt, och jag endast älskar henne men avgudar henne outsegligt i passioners eviga fatalitet. Och gärna skall jag lida för den saken som den hopplösa självplågare jag är, och alltid var obotligen till professionen. Bota i min plåga, men låt mig få hålla på så helst för evigt med att älska dig, min vän, den enda som jag aldrig kunde leva utan, hjärtevän av ödet och kamrat i evighetens frihetssträvan. Manifestation, reflection. The sweetness of your presence transcends all limits of a resplendent bliss, the more so for your absence, shortened by the overwhelming longing that keeps on continuing to grow, embracing you in ever warmer hugs of love that never can be stopped. Thus beauty rules the world magnificently and ubiquitously, bestowing on it everlasting life of simple love that never can be halted, but must keep on growing and continuing forever. Thus am I but one small wave along the ever-windy, roaring ocean, always moving forward, in the overwhelming love force that keeps battering all shores forever, in a constant demonstration of the universal force and origin of love and life. Appeal. May I love you once more, in secret intimacy, most clandestinely, with only you and me to watch, and be aware of how I love you, needing you more urgently than I myself can be aware of, never more to let you go away from me out of my heart, but keeping you in safety, locking myself out of any other possible pretension, since you are my other half, and without you my life would be reduced indeed to that intolerable poverty which was I before I met you. Maybe I protest too much, but love's voice never can be quieted, for nothing is more irresistible than the truth of nature in true love. hardships of the diehards. That's us, the sufferers, who never can give up but go on fighting, torturing themselves for nothing but thin air, despised as asinine ideals, while we know better, fighting to the bitter end, for our faith in truth and justice, untouchable crusaders for the values of eternity, unvanquishable truth and beauty manifested in continuous creativity that no one ever can put down, the glory of creation that, if anything on earth, is properly divine. Impossible equation that works. It's like a mathematic formula. Distance is unneutralized and absence is made void, reduced to nothing by affection, while our love can only be advanced by turning into objectivity by facts of separation, leaving only facts remaining of our common personality, how we belonged from the beginning to each other to remain so mystically in our mind united while we are two different persons still, of different stories, different destinies, and very different wills, and seem obliged to so remain. A common fate thus seems to be, united closely into love together, and the more so for our constant separation. Migrän-djävulen, du hamrar i min tinning, din förbannade demon. Förstör mitt liv och skäms sig för det, din fördömda sabotageexpert, som bara gör det för att jävlas utan någon mening alls och utan ens det ringaste motiv. Vad har jag gjort för att förtjäna dig som infernalisk och objuden våldsgäst? I 3 års tortyr och längre utan att du någonsin lämnar mig i fred, förutom blott för att förnya dina angrepp, alltid överraskande och grymt försåtliga, som om du ville tvinga mig till nederlag. Men jag ger aldrig upp och tål dina belägringar på livstid om så skulle krävas och slår lika hårt tillbaka med min envishet och energi. Och du blir tvungen till att vika dig till slut, din mördare och ärkeskurk till nedrig niding, din förrädare som bara angriper lömskt bakifrån och inifrån när offret ditt är obevakat, obeväpnat. Ty mot min arbetsnarkomani skall ens du i längden hålla stånd. Maturity. What does it matter that your hair is getting grayer and your temper slacker, while you get more comfortable substituting laziness for work, with handicaps and pains for an excuse, while you look less and less into the mirror to evade the obvious truth that you are getting old, but everyone is getting older. Even young impertinent and careless sports, rejoicing in their ignorance naively, have nothing to be proud of in the perspective of time, while we, in spite of our grey hairs, have learnt to love in spite of all and keep on loving, and that will keep us young at heart and ever grow our souls forever younger, as we stick to life's profoundest wisdom, that of simply sticking to our love. Out of touch. As we are never out of touch, no matter how far we are separated, there is never any risk of losing that most valuable touch of pricelessness, with our world of sound reality of chaos, turbulence, and revolutions, where the ultimate deciding force is nature, justly threatening with the upheaval of abusive mankind's universal terrorism, in irresponsibly exterminating wildlife, the only sound life form there is, which we are allied to as incurably free lovers of the wildest forms of life, and that is our eternal contact. Bide by me, my love, and keep to purity of life and soundness and of nature, and we'll never lose our touch as universal freedom fighters. a glimpse of paradise. A glimpse of paradise out in the desert of the nakedness of loneliness, the lack of water and the universal draught, and there was you, like some miraculous angelic apparition out of nowhere, showing me a way to go, a path through all the mirages of lies, of failures, of this barren life, which brought me back to life in search for you. And my chief comfort is now ever that however much astray I go, I know now that all ways and paths will always lead me back to you. Abstruse facts of life. So it was from the beginning. There were no limits to my faith in you, no reservations in my absolute affinity. The flow was there and live and ready to embalm you in the overwhelmingness of beauty, of the endless riches and resources of an overflowing heart once opened up to natural affection. And so there you are, we stand there caught by destiny in its most wondrous mechanisms of inexplicable benevolence, quite given up to our common soul that inveigles us in fathomless profundity of total mystery, all in the greatest riddle of them all, how all this actually could be reality. And yet it's there, and we are here, and all that we can do about it is only to succumb to factual love. Between the battles, in the breaks of time, between the battles, my sole chance of an escape is flying up to you in loving thoughts of limitless affection, far away from this confusing vanity, to find you even furthermore away, but there at least our thoughts can meet. It is the briefest of encounters, but the more invaluable as such, and more significant for its taking place at all. And I can live on it for any time throughout the trenches as I dive down into battle to be buried once again in this confusing world of vanity. Chance meetings. Suddenly a friend appears, completely out of nowhere, and you didn't even know that person did exist. And suddenly a new dimension opens up of aspects of new friendships and horizons. And your future prospects multiply of opportunities and possibilities, of new mentalities to know and new life facets to discover. Naturally, you must cling to such chance meetings and not let them just pass by, but catch them in their golden moment and preserve the treasure that they bring, to let them join your life and let yourself join in with them. Lyckträffar. Plötsligt finner man en vän på vägen som från ingenstans, och du hade ingen aning om ens att den vännen existerade. Och plötsligt uppenbaras nya dimensioner, nya vänskapsutsikter och nya horisonter, och din framtidsmöjligheter blir förhöjda genom nya tillfällen och nya öppna dörrar inför ny mentalitetsbekantskap och upptäckandet av nya livsaspekter. Självklart gäller det att ta tillvara sådana lyckträffar och låta dem passera, men att gripa dem i deras gyllene ögonblick och ta tillvara skatterna det medför och förena dem med ditt liv liksom du berikar ditt med att ta del i deras. Och förena dem med ditt liv liksom du berikar ditt med att ta del i deras. Stuck. As my heart melts into you, my love, with no end to As my heart melts into you, my love, with no end to its sweetness, filling up the world with beauty, coming out of our affection, there's nothing to resist our warmth as we encompass the whole universe in one embrace and fit of perfect love. I wish to stay with you, within you, never to get out of this embrace, to leave the joy of staying inside you in ecstasy of bliss and happiness. So let's just keep within each other, never to let go of our counterpart, and thus we will remain united to enrich the world of love with our love. Love and physics. I found my love so far away that it would seem a matter of far-fetchedness to bring it and to keep it up to date, and thus my closest friends, both male and female, are the farthest distanced from me. But at the same time, this might be the very proof that love is independent of the physical conditions and survives the better for adversity and trial, if it's genuine and true. My love is therefore closer to me than she ever was, although our worldly distance is unbridgeable except by the communion of the souls, which easily breaks any rule of physics. Bäst före. När var man bäst före? Det var väl någon gång för länge sedan. Innan man blev minnessvag och innan man gick in i väggar eller in i tåg som körde över en, eller då för tiden när man ännu kunde se allting i rött, i rosenfärger och naiv romantisering av allt som var fulare än vad man ville ha det. Då när man var ung, åtminstone då man var yngre, för nu blir man bara äldre hela tiden, vilket man ju aldrig blev förut. Det var väl då man var bäst före, innan man blev gammal, medan man ännu var allt för ung. We are all out of joint. As I dream of you, my love, you come to me in strange manifestations. I have even dreamt about your mother, although I did only meet her once. The care is infinite between us, not just for ourselves, but for our families. No matter how dispersed and shattered they are in all directions of the world, with usually aborted lives, which they claim all the same to be successes, while we are too down to earth for self-deception. But let all those tragedies and losses be, whose life is not a perfectly aborted failure, viewed objectively. We all end worse than even how we started, with a naked scream. And if we're lucky, we'll find love at least somewhere between, while the ultimate journey's end is always a most well-deserved release from all the things that always did go wrong, while we are free at least from the responsibility of trying to at least set something right. Sommarfrost. Kalla fötter får man av den kalla sommaren, där huvudvärken strålar neråt benen, så att mjältsjukan och gubbsjukan triumferar i trånande misärs erbarmliga melankoli, där solen strålar kallt på ödsligheten av ett antal ständigt mer förstörda liv. Vad kan man göra? Kärleken rann ut i slasken, spolades på toaletten och blev ej ens hackfärs, medan alla idioter bara går och sabbar allt vad man försöker göra, så att man blott känner för att dra, och helst då något gammalt över sig. Så blir man bara äldre och bedrövligare, medan sommarvärmen utebliver skadeglatt och släpper fram förkylningarnas kedjereaktion, som avlöser varandra generöst forsrännande, och man vill bara resa bort men har ej råd, då svenska kronan bara sjunker under isen. Så blir sommarens kalla fötter bara kallare, och sommaren går åt till smärtsam övervintring. Vad är kärleken till för? Om kärleken är något slags självplågeri med sjuklig lutning åt morbiditet, angår det inte mig, då kärlek ofrånkomligt bara måste existera och får ständigt komma fram på vilket sätt som helst. Det vanligaste är ju sex, på gott och ont, som dock befriar en och kan i viss mån innebära självförverkligande, medan det dock är påfrestande för nära relationer. Säkrare är kärleken som uttryck inom konsten, när man låter kreativiteten flöda ut i abstraktioner som ju faktiskt blott kan vara fördelaktiga, medan samtidigt det inte utesluter andra kärleksformer eller relationer. Medan andra låter kärleken kanaliseras religiöst och därmed höja den upp till universell nivå, som givetvis dock inte utesluter något annat sätt. Kort sagt, all äkta kärlek är av godo och oemotståndlig, så blott ge dig hän åt den, för det är ju det enda den är till för. Stuck. As my heart melts into you, my love, with no end to its sweetness, filling up the world with beauty, coming out of our affection, there is nothing to resist our warmth, as we encompass the whole universe in one embrace and fit of perfect love. I wish to stay with you, within you, never to get out of this embrace, to leave the joy of staying inside you in ecstasy of bliss and happiness. So let's just keep within each other, never to let go of our counterpart, and thus we will remain united to enrich the world of love with our love. The power of longing. As long as there is something for you ardently to long for, you will keep afloat and flying in control of all your powers, for the longing is the surest symptom of the definite syndrome of love and life. I know, the more you long, the more it is a torture, but I can assure you at the same time that the more you long, the healthier for you, since love is only wholesomeness, and longing is its spiritual manifestation. Never be afraid of longing and of suffering for love, for there is no more certain evidence of manifested truth of life in absolute sincerity and honesty. The supreme paradox, the supreme self-contradiction as its own supreme self-evidence. You are always by my side, especially when you are not there. You are always in my heart, especially when it is broken and empty. You are always present in my life, especially in your absence. You are always in my focus, especially when I am out of my mind and all my senses are dead. You are always my one and only love, the force of which goes on increasingly, constantly, forever, the more we are distanced from each other. And thus our love goes on, increasing and expanding, the more it becomes impossible, thus proving the supremest paradox in proving itself by refuting itself. Let it be enough, and would I not love you with a bleeding heart of fountain inexhaustibility, that never could care more for you in self-denial unto self-annihilation, out of worship, adoration, and idolatry? That fire never will be quenched, nor leave me ever any peace, and I enjoy it. Let it be enough, I could not love you more, nor could it ever end. To the brave oppositions in Iran and East Turkestan, wasted and exhausted, it's a feat to lift your feet, while flapping broken wings is just a weary burden, and your heart of lead needs melting down to softer, lighter, and more pliable material, for more apt and healthy purposes than heavy broken hearts and heartaches. Let me sleep again and dream again of better worlds than all the lost ones, and I shall most gratefully reach out for any straw that Providence and mercy offers me from nowhere in the whirling stream that drags me down into the dregs of all this worldly mess, of universal violation of all human rights and freedom, which was all the health there ever was in mankind. The problem of the eternally beloved. Beethoven's eternally beloved has never been identified, for instance. Who is his love? Who has his heart? Is there at all an object that can be identified? There has been timeless speculation, sometimes endlessly, in certain literary lovers' seriousness. Could they have been but fantasies, or was there really someone, and in that case, who was she? If it remains unknown, how can we even know about the gender? I assure you, there was never any true love that was not concrete. If there was love that found expression in sincerity and honesty of words, then the loved one always was a person, and a certain person other than himself. And if he called her Beatrice, Laura, Fanny, or a secret and protected name, it is a matter of self-evident and obvious proof that she was clearly an identified and private person, never anything diffuse or general, and never just a fantasy. For true love is not love if it is not concrete, which every true and honest lover knows too well, and there was never any word against it. Problemet med den evigt älskade. Beethovens evigt älskade har aldrig kunnat identifieras, till exempel. Vem älskar han? Vem har hans hjärta? Finns det överhuvudtaget ett objekt som kan identifieras? Ofta har det spekulerats i oändlighet i vissa litterära älskares seriositet. Har det blott varit fantasier, eller fanns det faktiskt någon, och vem var hon i så fall? Om det är okänt, vet man ens då vad det var för kön? Jag kan försäkra er att det fanns aldrig någon äkta kärlek som ej var konkret. Om det fanns kärlek som fann uttrycksfullhet i uppriktighetens nakna ord, så var det alltid en person, en viss person, och någon annan än han själv. Och om hon hette Laura eller Beatrice, Fanny eller otalat skyddat namn, så är det självklart och bevisligen en klar identifierad och privat person och aldrig något generellt diffust och aldrig blott en fantasi. Ty äkta kärlek är ej kärlek om den inte är konkret. För det vet varje äkta älskare och aldrig kan det påstås något annat. Utschasad. Att hänge sig åt vild melankoli och sjunka ner till botten av en avgrund utan slut av bara vemodskrankhet efter en oändlighets besvikelser och bara törsta djupt ihjäl av allt man aldrig nådde fram till efter seklers självförbrukning fullständigt i onödan, är ändå att på något sätt nå fram till någon meningsfullhet i all meningslöshets intighet, om så det ändå blott till slut ej blev mer än en stämning. Sotto voce. Am I too intimate for you? Is that an outrage that insults you? Let me lower then my whispers to be even more inaudible, except for your ears only, and allow my touch to soften even unto mere vibrations, unperceivable except for your soul only, in the finest harmonies conceivable, that can be heard in silence only, in the voice of only purest love. Thus maybe I may touch and love you without ever hurting you, or trespassing too closely on your soul, too well aware of the extremest sensitivity that only the supremest, truest love is made of. Kärlekens mysterium. Vad är kärlekens kraftsinnersta mysterium? Är det att man älskar själv eller att en annan älskar en? Kommer kraften utifrån, från någon annan än en själv, eller är den inifrån och egen? Ingen vet. Det enda säkra är väl att man aldrig är helt ensam om den, att den måste vara dualistisk, ömsesidig för att kunna existera och fungera. Och då lutar jag åt det mysteriet, att det är två själars samklang som det handlar om, som på något sätt har en kontakt utöver den materiella som tycks klart manifesteras när två själar har bestående kontakt fastän den fysiska kontakten saknas. Det är nog om något äkta kärlek som består i andra dimensioner än i bara tid och rum. The mystery of love. What is the inmost power mystery of love? Is it your own active love, or is it someone other loving you? Is this mysterious force an outside matter reaching you from others, or is it your own and private matter? No one knows for sure. The only certain thing is that you never are alone with it, that it must be a dual mutual thing to work and to exist at all. And then I lean towards the mystery that it is the communion of two souls that it is all about, that somehow reach a contact that is beyond the material, which seems obviously manifested when two souls remain in contact although they can't see each other. That, if anything, is probably true love, which carries on beyond all known dimensions, independently of space and time. Expressionism. Det viktigaste i all kärlek är att den blir uttryckt och att därför den är uttrycksfull. Allt kommer an på expressiviteten som är mera övertygande ju mera expressiv den är. Det största uttrycket i kärlek är dock i allmänhet det minsta. Viskningen kan säga mer än alla starka uttryck och domderanden. Liksom en stilla melodi uttrycker mycket mer. En megafon förstärkt elektriskt decibel. Där all volym är desto tomare ju högre upp den skruvas på. Mest uttrycksfullt av allt kan dock ren tystnad vara. Som i just det rätta ögonblicket säger mycket mer blott genom att den tiger än vad någonsin en dikt kan säga. Gubbsjuka. Låt mig vila ut i dina armar och få sträcka ut mig i din famn för att få bara slappna av från livets stressande förintelse av bara huvudvärk och hjärtattacker. Jag är blott ett gammalt vrak som ej begär just mycket mer än att få vitna mina ben i sanden efter ständig oro på de vilda oceanerna som ej hanterar någon bräcklig farkost väl. Jag kan ej mer gå ner i varv, ty inget varv kan mera fixa mig. Så uttorkad och undergrävd av parasitskeppsmaskar som jag är, som knappast har mer liv att uppvisa än gubbsjukans patetiska besatthet och fixering vid allt möjligt som förstör koncentrationen. Ack, en dröm om någon som man kunde lita på i motsats och kontrast mot alla svikare är allt jag har att ty mig till, men drömmen finns dock där. Och jag besvär den, låt mig vila ut i dina armar och få stanna kvar i illusionen av din famn, för det att äntligen få slappna av och slockna. Surreptitiously. The impossibility of our love is no impediment to its reality. We can deny it to the world, but never to ourselves. It is a fact of life, and though it brings much suffering, the joy of it is infinite, belonging to the zone of timelessness, a certain matter of eternity. So let it just go on in torment, agony and sorrow, its beauty easily surviving vanity and every weakness of mortality, since in untouchable supremacy it simply never can give in. Timelessness. After some midnight discussions with Marco at Lungsnon, best greetings, Marco. Timelessness is actually the only time zone and the one we all should live in, now, tomorrow, and in all times past, neglecting nothing of a time responsibility for all that happens, all that ever happened, and all things to come. The individual responsibility is absolute, transcending the mortality of power and politics, dismally confined in private interests, while the individual mind of empathy and sense of decency is the supreme responsibility and motor of all welfare for mankind. The cue now for the future is cooperation, since what history now needs most urgently is a new age of international cooperation. The volatility of love. You fall in love and fall to wishful thinking that you found your life's ideal and offer her eternities of love in perfect willingness to sacrifice whatever until you are cheated and betrayed, deceived and brought to ruin by reality. Thus love seems just a fleeting thing, like a delightful dream of no more substance, but still love remains and drives you on. The very heart of love is to continue against all denial, spurring you to, after all, remain an obstinate idealist. And whoever falls to love, love never falls. Hope. I could cry out my eyes in flooding tears of blood for all my sorrows and lost loves. But still there is the possibility for beauty to, in spite of all, start triumphing again, since it was there once, true and honest, but you chose to just walk by and leave her as a fatally presumed impossibility. The formula is this: first do your duty and what's necessary, then do what is possible of all the things you want to do, and after that, quite natural accomplishment, you will find that all that's left for you to do is to break through and carry out the most impossible, for beauty never leaves us, but is always there, just waiting to appear again if she is bypassed, hibernating to just flourish, ever turning up again. The magic of Manali. Manali is one of the most popular hill stations in India, at the foot of the Himalayas at 2,000 meters, with a very exotic cultural blend of its own. The friendly idyll of the snowy hills has something over it of deep intrigue, while nomads, outcasts, sadhus, hippies, trekkers and adventurers flock here. To some of them remain for life, a sacred haven for the seekers, with exotic access to such places of notoriety as Manikaran and Malana up the Parvati, the Valley of the Lost, and those desiring oblivion, like all those pathetic Israelis after 3 years heavy and traumatic military service, going on the loose here only to forget about the situation, like so many others here with their lost lives. There certainly are stories here to tell and to discover, and to learn concerning destiny and the whole situation of the definite predicament of all humanity. The nomad. Nothing can impede his freedom. He was born to roam and wander all his life, and lucky he to have that precious gift of being constantly in touch with the supreme divinity of freedom all his life, like being touched and ordained by eternity. And he's wiser than most civilized prisoners of cities spending all their lives in cubicles, since he never bargains with his freedom, his ideal of staying constantly in touch with nature, ever on the move and circulating with the universe to stop at nothing, since the only perfect freedom never knows of any bounds or any limiting dimensions. Departure. The sadness filling up the vacuum in the emptiness of your departed friends is like an endless melancholy abyss, too profound and overwhelming for expression, going deeper in your heart and soul than any physical expression can admit or show. The feeling is draining you of energy and will, so far that even oceans of your tears will never water such a desert, and not even make a dwindling mud pool for relief to all your pains, regrets, and losses. But that hope remains, that your friends are still there and waiting for you in the future, for that golden moment to return of your most loving association. What about it? What about love, my darling? You tempt me so seductively and irresistibly, and I am all for it, but still there are misgivings of experience. So many times the truest love affairs went wrong, and the cliché happy ending is the falsest myth, since there always was what happened afterwards. So let me love you faithfully, but without ties. Let love be free and active on its wings, without any cuts and no enforcements down to earth. And only so I certainly will love you and be constant ever in my faith in freedom. Bergtagen. Jag tappade förståndet och förlorade min själ uppe i bergen och kan inte få ner dem igen. Det kallar mig dit tillbaka, och det finns inget annat val än att återvända dit upp till bergen, där friheten ständigt kallar på din befrielse och håller kvar din själ i säkert oåtkomligt förvar tills du kommer tillbaka, upp dit till bergen, där en dag äntligen du kommer att finna din frid, där uppe bortom bergen, med ditt huvud bland molnen, högt uppe i det blå, där den yttersta friheten finns, långt borta, där uppe, bortom de högsta bergen. Spirited away, I lost my mind and soul up in the mountains, and cannot get them down again. They call for me up there, and there is no choice but to return, up to the mountains, where freedom calls forever for your liberation, holding there your mind and soul in safe and sacred custody until you return up there unto the mountains, where one day finally you will find your peace, up there beyond the mountains, with your head lost in the clouds of the ultimate freedom way up high beyond the tops of the mountains. Renewal. I was old and miserable and decrepit, worn out by too many sorrows, problems galore and worries without end. But someone came along, and it was you. The spiritual healing of such wounds that bleed to death inside the soul without an outer trace of anything is more miraculous than any other cure, than any medicine and wonder, and there was an urgent need of it. The question now is how to keep it up, maintaining this our new reunion without new mistakes and failings, without getting all dispersed, disintegrating into pieces. All we need is to keep up communication. That's the only lifeline which, when working, can accomplish any miracle and make all problems vanish blissfully transformed into surmounted challenges. Frailty. Thy soul is all the treasure of your love and universal charm, the concentration of your beauty, irrevocable and irresistible, and unperishable as your heart, so full of only warmth and joy that can but last forever. Let me cherish you, but without touching you, inflicting never any harm or injury, but only watering your cultivation, as the most conscientious lover only would at any cost wage all on just preserving and aggrandizing the beauty of the everlasting moment of consummate love. Hestia, this enigmatic divinity, one of the 12 gods of ancient Greece, was the only one never to be depicted. Her symbol was instead the hearth. The unknown goddess almost never made a statue of, a silent, modest background figure staying quietly at home, and maybe the most vital and important of all gods and goddesses, for doing nothing but just being there at home in coziness, with warmth and candour by the fireplace, just keeping up the homely standard order, keeping clean and making the home comfortable. What could possibly be more important than the very base of life, a home to be at ease with and to be at home in? Still, she never made much noise, no scandals, no atrocities, no arguments, no love affairs, just being there as the continuous stability, the comfort of just being there at peace and keeping up the basics as the only ground for the existence of all humankind. Hestia, den okändaste av den grekiska antikens 12 gudomligheter, den enda aldrig avbildade, istället alltid framställd i hemhärdens tecken. Den okända gudinnan, aldrig presenterad som staty, en tyst och from försynthet, som representant för hemmets härd och kanske den mest viktiga av alla gudar och gudinnor, för att hon blott är och vad hon är, där hemma i varm innerlig intimitet, där allt som gäller är att hålla hemmet levande, fungerande och rent i ordning. Vad kan vara viktigare än att vidmakthålla denna grund för hela livet, någonstans att vara hemma och att alltid känna sig välkommen i? Hon gjorde aldrig något väsen av sig, ingenting utsvävande och vidlyftigt, inga tvister, bråk, skandaler eller kontroverser. Bara den kontinuerliga stabiliteten, tryggheten i att få leva sunt i fred och underhålla grunderna för all uppbygglig mänsklig verksamhet. Withering heights, when the devils attack me in the night, my only possible escape is you, while storms keep harrowing the countryside, wreaking havoc and destruction, threatening our lives with mortal danger. But my life is safe and beyond reach, and I'm with her in my dreams, untouchable to any mortal evil. And I wallow in my bliss and feast atrociously in my beatitude. More certain than I ever was before, no hubris ever can get even near to the sublimity of love's eternal consummation, that keeps constantly surpassing and transcending even all her previous endeavors of eternity. Getting through, is it really worth it? All that agony and desperation, all that torture and despair that is the consequence and other side of love and ecstasy, the abyss of that hell that heaven's bliss inevitably leads to, ending up in knots of opposites, the heavenly existence and its liberation proving but a trap and desperate entanglement of jealousies, complexities, suspicions, sleeplessness and nightmares. But the issue is of no importance, since love never can be done without, evaded or escaped from. It is always there, expecting you and waiting for you, and there is no way out but to just get through with it. And while you suffer it, you might as well enjoy it. Baksmällan dagen efter, boksmällan efter bokmossan. Tautologin är fullkomligt medveten, ty så känns det. Efterdyningarna, dånande baksmällorna, de fortlöpande duvningarna, susningarna efter krascherna. Det är ej lätt att hämta sig efter mässfallet som gick i taket, då man ju ligger blåslagen och fullkomligt eftersläckt av den omfattande utslagningen. Att stå där 4 dagar, varje dag, på golvet mitt i flödet av allt prat och propagandaflöde, är att låta sig bli dränkt av en långt värre syndaflod än den som allt nu är färskt i minnet, efter den där katastrofen som någon minns för en 5-6 tusen år sedan. Så ursäkta mig att jag ej är i stånd att mer ha något stånd just nu, plakat och avsmäld som man är av bokmässfallets kataklysmers omfattande, tillplattande manglingars hejdundrande, besinningslösa rus. Facebook Reflections. They say it's only for the young, a forum for displaying vanity, a wallowing in nonsense and an endless jungle of confusion. But it's in fact a very clever site, well programmed, trimmed and working well, a kind of ideal social network for anyone to keep in touch with all his friends or hers on a continuous, regular and daily basis, with a smart and most efficient possibility to exchange ideas and links and pictures. Yes, it is the ideal social network for the busy person who has little time to spend in actual company of all his friends, while he can reach whomever all across the world by simply looking up in his computer what his friends are writing and communicating universally, but simply in the common Facebook which, accessible to everyone, belongs to everyone. The mask. You veil yourself in most mysterious disguises as you enter prying into love in masks that not just hide your face away, but even all your personality, neutralizing and dissolving all your sex, to give full entry to your overwhelming love that flows so generously without end, so as to raise suspicions as to who you really are. Perhaps it's better not to know it, but to be content with your unfathomableness, which in its unidentifiable disguises is the perfected, manifested mystery of love. Delirium. You are a concrete person, no mistake, although I mainly see you from behind, where nonetheless your beauty fills me overwhelmingly with joyfulness, delirium, and repletes my life with lovely dreams of love that promises eternal continuity, for such is beauty's force and influence, more strong than anything on earth, especially when clad in weakness and humility. Thus am I sneaking constantly up from behind to you, to never let you go out of my love that keeps caressing, worshipping and cherishing you in fondest sweetness indefatigably, keeping up that soft delirium, never to diminish, but to, on the contrary, forever grow, for there is no more reliable long-term expansion than the labor of untiring love. Backstage. The dream of love will never end, but constantly perfume our daily lives with never-ending fragrance of sublime and subtle dreams that are more real than ever our reality will be, since love, the background motor of all life's existence, is all-powerful but only in spirituality, the action being just a consequential play. The background lovers, then, are those who truly know something about it and will keep controlling it, sustaining life in perfectly expanding continuity as long as they remain invisible behind the scenes, aware of the importance of safeguarding the most sacred secret mystery of love's untouchability in order to remain all-powerful. Dead end of conspiracies. When everything is turned against you, what can you do? Just nothing. Maybe you could simply scrap a thing or two, some uncooperative apparatus like an obstinate computer that just drives you nuts, with other electronic instruments, all turned against you in a hopeless conspiration that gives you no other choice but to give up and leave it all to hell, renouncing all responsibility. And when you finally succeeded in efficiently doing away with all those fucking monsters that just turned your life into a dead-end trap, a regular straight-jacket of obstructions, sabotage, disorder, havoc, mess, and bloody hell, then maybe you could start again in yet another effort to make something sensible out of your life just for a change. Considering the fact that I'm late for work and out of work and can't get done my work since there's too much of it and I just can't get out of it, I might as well just call it off and stop here at my work to spend the night here working in my sleep. It's not a very good idea. I should go home to bed instead and stay there with my love that I keep constantly neglecting, while the less that I neglect my work, the less of it I manage to get done. So what's the use of getting constantly mixed up in this and never get things sorted out? My love is there and waiting for me, and so is my work, but they can never be combined. So let's reach a compromise. Let's work just with my love in mind, and let us sleep just dreaming of my love, and maybe then we will get something done. Mermaid love. My love is gone down under to the bottom of the ocean, swimming there along in fairy tales with dolphins like a pursued mermaid that no mortal can join up with, but my company's hers, and love knows of no limitation. We can float and flow forever in the best of companies with elves and fairies, mermaids, angels, and what not, and never tire of that flexibility, enabling us to any change of form to just keep on pursuing love into the utmost bottomless recesses of the universal abyss of profundity of true and everlasting love. The song of sirens. They really mean no harm, and all they want is love. And it is perfectly convincing, their alluring song of love, that is so desperately beautiful that no one can resist its perfect and expressive honesty. Still, the only consequence is wrecks and ruins, skeletons and ruined lives, and no one knows what happened to the victims. All they did was to approve of love and listen to its perfect music, and become enticed by it quite naturally. They were only human, and they drank the song of love and perished. No one has survived to tell their story. They were sailors all and children of the sea, who met with the consummate form of love in highest musical unfathomableness and beauty, and as far as anybody knows, no one of them regretted it. The most impossible equation, the sunken love beneath the waves, seems hopelessly to have been lost forever, buried in the ocean world of tears where nothing is retrieved or can be found. The grave that takes it all, returning nothing. But how come then that my love still hovers in a constant flight on wings of elves that never can be caught or taken down to earth, and that a few initiated only can be made aware of, and that only the mind's eye can see, apart of course from second sight? That is the strange impossibility and paradox, that although I have lost my love forever, it is more alive than ever. Sea of love, let me drown you in my sea of love and sink with you into the waves of everlasting tempests, turbulence, and wholesome fleeting movements in this world of constant change, where we together may carouse and blend in life's surprising journey of dramatic destinies and fateful turns that ever make us start again on new adventures into the profundity of this amazing sea of love affairs that ever seem to multiply in richness as intoxicating as your hair, this universe of beauty to get lost in, while this worship keeps us ever diligent in making never-tiring love. So let's get buried and get lost into the abyss of a stormy ocean, of a passion that can never end but only must increase forever. Flying colours, let me not forget to love you, soul and body, heart and mind, all the time and never leave you, but in absence even always keep you present in my mind uninterruptedly, persistently in close communication, never to forget the most important of all facts, that I have not the right to live if I for a moment fail to love. To keep that light and fire burning that must never be extinguished but must burn forever, to keep hope and life alive in sustained and constant flying colours, since that's all we really need. Skadskjuten, sårat lejon ryter illa, vingbruten fågel kan ej klaga. Smärtans träsk är tyst som graven, då levande begravda varken syns eller hörs. Men det finns alla där, de tysta invaliderna, alla de som tiger och lider och finner tigandet därom det enda som kan göra det uthärdligt. Och lever vidare på kryckor, i rullstolar, utan tröst i tystnad och utan att klaga i stolthet. Och så fortsätter ständigt det eviga livet i sitt ständigt döda lopp, i det ständigt pågående lidande som åtminstone får en att känna att man lever. To a holy mountain, this crowning day of beauty is like a dream of ideal worship, of a deity omnipresent and untouchable, but still accessible and visible, though completely out of reach, in perfect purity and splendor, way out there 5,000 meters up, in never-matched glorious supremacy, fitting only for the absolute divinity. Thus do I worship thee, O holy mountain, perfect symbol for the unattainable perfection, out of reach but omnipresent, in impressing beauty that shines out forever. Love in the mist, you came invisible except for contours through the fogs of mystery and mists of random chance, and found me out immediately, as if you actually could read my mind like any open book, which would be understandable since you have read me through for 30 years. Still, this entrance through the clouds is most characteristic of our spurious relationship, with all those accidental meetings out of nowhere, out of time, which ever grows in intimacy into ever denser mists of mystery. Moonlight skywalk. In this darkness, light is universal. Nothing could possibly harm or touch me. In this charming haze of sacred mists of mystery, as moonlight floods the earth and lights my path, through any night to nowhere, anywhere but always forward, to continuously greater heights of beauty and its ever-waxing glory, through the landscape dreams of ever denser magic, as I reach for you beyond the stars, full well aware that you are always there, in constant wait for me in loyalty and faithfulness. Like I have never let you down, my love of shining moonlight, through eternal nights of love where we shall never tire of aspiring further to the stars, beyond the endless beauty of the universe. The other side of love. Love brings you the serenest heights of ecstasy, but as sometimes you must do without it, you are plunged into the depths of most unbearable despair and feel yourself abandoned on a desert ocean of melancholy, the stillness of which is the worst of all, as you drift lonely in the universe, just falling through the utmost emptiness, down to a bottom that does not exist, of darkness growing ever darker and more hollow. But this melancholy is, however, just a remedy, a medicine and balance to your trips of love exorbitances and love ecstasies, and you should take it just for what it is, the other side of paradise and any shining medal, which exists just to enhance the glory of the front, the background darkness to lift forth the light, the endless midnight sky of universal inaccessibility to just add glory to the blinding light of day, and all its present swarming life of splendour, wallowing in love to never reach an end on it. The Darjeeling Lecture, delivered in Darjeeling 2000 and revised in 2009. An orientation in contemporary literature. The Bible, Homer, Dante, Shakespeare. These are the four cornerstones of world literature and civilization. The Bible as foundation for the three monotheistic world religions, Homer as the firm ground of the whole classical civilization, Dante as the originator of the Renaissance, and Shakespeare as the maker of modern man. These four authorities almost make up half of the history of literature. Victor Hugo, Charles Dickens, Dostoevsky, Leo Tolstoy. These are the four literary giants dominating the 19th century. Victor Hugo by his romantic spirit, Dickens with his humanitarian pathos, Dostoevsky by his psychology, and Leo Tolstoy by his realism. Then comes the 20th century, but why don't we have giants like this in that age? The First World War destroyed an entire generation of hopes and talents. Such a brilliant and promising novelist as Henri Alain Fournier fell on the Western Front. Many were the poets that shared his fate, like Rupert Brooke and Wilfred Owen, and the Second World War was even worse. The disaster of the first half of the century made it almost impossible for creative writers of classical literature to exist. Among the most typical examples are the collaborating couple Romain Rolland, Stefan Zweig, pacifists who detached themselves from the mundane world and almost completely dedicated themselves to writing only biographies, to preserve for the future the lives of real artists and writers, the existence of which a new unhuman age had made impossible. Romain Rolland ended up as a Hinduist, and Stefan Zweig, after perhaps the most brilliant literary career of the 20th century, committed suicide in the third year of the Second World War, being an Austrian and a Jew. He found it impossible to exist in a world which could have brought an Adolf Hitler to power. All the same, there have been writers in the 20th century, but what kind has dominated it? Affected modernists and posing humbugs like T.S. Eliot, James Joyce, Samuel Beckett, and other freaks and frauds of unintelligible language distortions. Classical literature has almost completely disappeared, like classical art and music, to be replaced by nonsense, ugliness, and noise. Fortunately, there have been exceptions, though, and a few examples are worth keeping in mind. In America, there are but very few, since vulgarity seems to dominate everything produced there, but in England we have several interesting examples. Robert Graves had enough of the Western world by the First World War, and afterwards almost exclusively dedicated himself to classical history and mythology. Joseph Conrad was a Pole, but wrote in English, and his greatest admirer was Graham Greene, who must be regarded as one of the most important authors of the century, like the great connoisseur of human nature, William Somerset Maugham. Another underestimated writer is James Hilton, educated at Cambridge with his sometimes ingenious novels. Among later authors, John Fowles should be noted, whose novel The French Lieutenant's Woman is a successful attempt at reviving the great 19th century novel. Let's also remember a few authors outside England. By the epoch-making Dr. Zhivago, Boris Pasternak continues the great Russian tradition from Dostoevsky and Tolstoy. The dramas of Jean-Paul Sartre are completely original and very effective, while at the same time he continues the tradition of the ancient Greek drama. Another very important modern novel is the Italian Elsa Morante's History, in its deep neorealistic settlement with the times of Mussolini and fascism. Although the great romantic realistic storytelling tradition has had its hardest setbacks since the darkest medieval ages, it has survived and is continuing. But the same rule applies as ever. We have nothing else to build on but tradition. We have our great universal examples in the Bible, Homer, Dante, and Shakespeare. And we have the great 19th century novelists to look up to. And even if the first half of the 20th century was almost only disastrous adversities, we still have the old examples to keep in mind, continue to learn from, and keep up for the future. Why then, finally, is that tradition so important? Why bother about reading books? Because in those great immortal sacred books we have all the humanity there is. We have to look to them to find the sources of humanity, humanitarianism, the very identity of civilized man. The great classical writers are those who best understood and knew about man, and thus could improve him by setting new examples. That's why I call the writer behind Shakespeare's dramas the maker of modern man, for so far no one has understood human nature better and improved it more than he. Concerning the art of writing, there are three things to always bear in mind: concentration, meaning, and style. Whatever you write, it must be as concentrated as possible, not to be boring. It has to have a meaning. There is never any meaning in nonsense, for instance, while style can only be acquired by diligent practice. It usually comes with the years. The best practice of all, however, is simply to be a good reader, to read as much as possible of qualified literature, preferably classics, and learn from what others have written. Knowledge is, of course, perhaps the most important of all, which you can only acquire by lots of reading and practice. One good book to learn a lot from, and a magnificent example of concentration and style, is Somerset Maugham's The Summing Up, a quite small book that, however, never can be exhausted for its best possible advice to all readers and writers.